Welcome to this journey through one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of Savannah, Georgia. Before we begin, I invite you to leave a comment sharing where you are listening from and the exact time at which you are hearing this narration. We are interested in understanding which places and at what hours of day or night these documented accounts reach. The year was 1841 when the first strange occurrences were formally noted at Forsyth Estate, a cotton plantation situated just 3 miles east of Savannah's historic district. The property stood as a monument to Southern prosperity, its white columns rising like sentinels against the Georgian sky. Yet beneath the grand facade and behind the meticulously maintained gardens, a darkness had taken root, one that would remain hidden for many years. Elelena Beaumont arrived at Forsyth Estate in the winter of 1835. Her acquisition was recorded in the county ledger with nothing more than a single line of cursive and a monetary sum. Parish records list her age as 22. The documentation described her as possessing exceptional domestic skills, though later testimonies would suggest these qualities were not the true reason for her selection. Thomas Harrington, the 46-year-old master of Forsyth Estate, had recently lost his wife to consumption. Contemporary sources suggest that in the weeks prior to Elena's arrival, Harrington had been observed repeatedly inspecting newly arrived individuals at the market. His final choice was Elelena Beaumont. A journal kept by the estate's caretaker, discovered during renovations in 1958, contains a curious entry dated January 12, 1835. New arrival today. Master seems unusually attentive to her quarters. Requested the room adjacent to the kitchen be prepared with particular care. Unusual for January. In the beginning, Elena's presence at Forsyth appeared unremarkable to outside observers. She carried out her duties alongside approximately 30 other enslaved individuals, responsible for maintaining the plantation and manor house. What distinguished her situation, according to household records and later testimonies, was her rapid elevation to a position within the main house, assigned specifically to direct service to Thomas Harrington. By the autumn of 1836, Elena's status had changed significantly. Expense ledgers preserved by the Savannah Historical Society reveal a series of unusual purchases: fabric of a quality not typically issued to enslaved persons, a pair of leather shoes, and most notably a small silver locket. The receipt for this final item was later discovered, tucked inside Thomas Harrington's personal Bible, found in a trunk in the estate attic in 1962. Maria Wilson, who served as a cook at the neighboring Wilkes plantation, later provided testimony to her grandson. This account was recorded as part of a 1948 oral history project. According to Wilson, those who worked the nearby estates were fully aware of what was occurring at Forsyth. The master had taken a fancy to the Beaumont woman, she recalled. She wasn't treated like the others. She ate in the house, wore finer clothes, but there was something in her eyes that wasn't right. Like she was there, but not there. The discovery beneath the oak tree proved even more unsettling than expected. Beneath its roots, workers uncovered 4 small sets of remains, not 3, as the known graves would have suggested. The additional remains belonged to an infant, approximately newborn in size, with no evidence of a burial container. This finding might have remained a historical curiosity were it not for its timing. It coincided with the death of Dr. Samuel Thorne, the longtime physician to Forsyth Estate. Among his personal papers was a sealed envelope marked Forsyth Estate, confidential. Inside lay a single sheet, bearing an account dated October 11, 1841. Called to Forsyth under most disturbing circumstances. Mrs. B. delivered of stillborn male infant during the night. No midwife present. Child already wrapped and prepared for burial upon my arrival. Mother in an extremely weakened condition, both physically and in mind. Evidence of significant blood loss. Advised immediate removal to hospital in Savannah, But Mr. H refused, insisting on home treatment. Against my better judgment, I have acquiesced to his wishes. I fear the outcome is predetermined. I record this account to clear my conscience, though I pray it never becomes necessary to share it. The discovery of this document, coupled with the fourth set of remains, briefly captured the attention of the local press. Yet, with most of the individuals involved long deceased, and the estate itself transformed into an industrial zone, public interest soon waned. For nearly a century, the story of Elena Beaumont and the children of Forsyte Estate faded from collective memory. That silence was broken in 1963, when a graduate student named Margaret Wilson of the University of Georgia began researching unexplained disappearances of enslaved women in antebellum Savannah for her doctoral dissertation. Her investigation led her to fragments of Forsyte Estate records, preserved across multiple archives, through estate ledgers, church registries, business correspondence, medical logs, private journals, and oral histories. Wilson reconstructed a fragmented narrative, completed in 1967 but never published. Her dissertation advanced a theory that would later gain traction among historians. According to Wilson's findings, Elena Beaumont did not die at Forsyte Estate in October of 1841. Instead, following the stillbirth and secret burial of her fourth child, she was sold through private channels to a plantation owner in Louisiana. Wilson uncovered a bill of sale, dated October 13th, 1841, documenting the transfer of a domestic servant aged 28, described as being in delicate health, from Thomas Harrington to Jeremiah Wilcox of St. Francisville, Louisiana. Attempts to trace Elena's life beyond this transaction were thwarted by incomplete records, many destroyed in courthouse fires during the Civil War. There, the historical trail ended. In 1968, during construction on what had once been Forsyte Estate land, workers excavating a foundation uncovered a small silver locket buried nearly 6 feet below ground, close to where the oak tree had stood. Inside was a braid of dark hair and a miniature ivory portrait depicting a woman of mixed ancestry. On the reverse, barely legible, were the initials E.B. The locket is now housed in the Savannah Historical Society Museum, an easily overlooked artifact, yet one of the few tangible remnants of Elena Beaumont's existence. Today, nothing remains of Forsyte Estate. The manor house, the gardens, and the oak tree are gone. The land has been reshaped by industrial and commercial development. A single historical marker, erected in 1992 at the edge of a shopping center parking lot, notes only the former presence of a cotton plantation owned by the Harrington family. Elena Beaumont and her children are not mentioned, yet local accounts persist. Night security guards have reported hearing a woman singing softly near the eastern portion of the property. Maintenance workers have discovered small arrangements of white roses placed on the ground overnight, despite no one appearing on security footage. 3 separate night watchmen, between 1975 and 2005, claim to have seen a woman in outdated dress, walking slowly across the property at approximately 3 in the morning, always in mid-August, always moving toward the place where the oak tree once stood, always vanishing when approached. These accounts are routinely dismissed as urban legend. Still, they endure, passed quietly through generations, a whispered counterpoint to the sanitized histories offered to visitors. In 1969, Margaret Wilson attempted to return to her research, intending to expand her dissertation into a book. In a letter to her academic advisor, she wrote of unexpected resistance from families connected to the Harrington lineage. Doors that were previously open have been firmly closed, she noted. I cannot help but feel that even after more than a century, there are those who prefer this history remain buried. After reportedly receiving anonymous communications urging her to abandon the project, Wilson accepted a teaching position in New England and never published her findings. The fate of Elena Beaumont remains unknown. If she was sold to Louisiana, No definitive record of her life or death there has been found. She disappears from history as completely as she vanished from Forsyte Estate. What can be stated with certainty is this. Between 1837 and 1841, Elena Beaumont bore 4 children at Forsyte Estate. All 4 died in infancy or early childhood. All were buried beneath an oak tree rather than in the unmarked ground reserved for the enslaved. And in the autumn of 1841, Elena herself disappeared under circumstances Thomas Harrington took great care to obscure. In 2008, a descendant of the Harrington family donated a collection of papers to the Savannah Historical Society. Among them was a water-damaged journal kept by Thomas Harrington's cousin Walter. One entry, dated April 1842, read, "Thomas confided in me today after several brandies. He believes the children were taken as divine retribution for his sins. Perhaps that is easier for him than the alternative his physician suggested, that they may have been helped to their ends. When I asked by whom, he looked at me hollowly and said, 'By the one who loved them too much to let them live as she had lived.' I will not transcribe the rest. Some words should not be preserved." In 1969, another discovery added a final layer to the mystery. During renovations at St. John's Episcopal Church, a hidden compartment revealed a letter dated October 14, 1841, written by Reverend James Sullivan. The letter described Elena's final hours in Savannah, her removal under sedation, and her whispered words. "All 4 sleep beneath the oak. I sang to them as they passed." Whether the letter records a crime, an act of mercy, or both remains unresolved. The graves are gone. The house is gone. The oak tree no longer stands. Yet the story persists in archives, in scholarship, in silence, and in memory. In the absence of justice, remembrance must serve. And so we remember Elena Beaumont and the 4 children buried beneath an oak tree that no longer exists, on land that no longer resembles what it once was, yet still echoes for those willing to listen. Montgomery's research drew renewed attention to Elena Beaumont's fate. Shipping records dated October 15, 1841 list a female Negro, infirm, among the cargo of the merchant vessel Carolina Star, bound for New Orleans. The ship's log, preserved in maritime archives, records that this unnamed passenger died at sea on October 17th and was buried, according to maritime custom. If this individual was indeed Elena Beaumont, as Montgomery's findings strongly suggest, then her journey ended not on plantation soil, but in the waters of the Atlantic, far from both Forsyte Estate and the Louisiana plantation that purportedly purchased her. The wooden carving discovered alongside Reverend Sullivan's letter remains in the archives of St. John's Church. It depicts a standing woman holding 4 small bundles, their features indistinct, but their meaning unmistakable. Anthropologists have identified the carving style as consistent with West African traditions, suggesting that Elena retained cultural knowledge, despite the violence of enslavement. The herb pouch found with the carving was analyzed by botanists in 2005. It contained dried foxglove, Jimson weed, and elderberries, plants known to possess toxic properties when prepared in certain ways, all documented as growing on or near Forsyte Estate during the period in question. These findings prompted Montgomery and later scholars to reconsider the long-standing portrayal of Elena solely as a passive victim. Instead, some researchers have proposed a more complex and deeply unsettling interpretation, that Elena, faced with the certainty that her children would be born into bondage, may have made the devastating choice to end their suffering herself. This theory remains unproven and controversial. Other historians argue that the children's deaths could have resulted from natural causes, given the high infant mortality rates of the era. Still others suggest that if the deaths were deliberate, responsibility may have rested with Thomas Harrington, who may have viewed the children as an increasing threat to his social standing. What remains indisputable is this. 4 children died at Forsyte Estate between 1837 and 1841. Their remains were found beneath an oak tree, and Elelena Beaumont vanished from Savannah in October of 1841, likely dying at sea shortly thereafter. At the center of this history lies the question of agency. Who acted, who decided, and who controlled the narrative? In a system designed to strip individuals of autonomy, what choices remained? What forms could resistance take? How does one weigh love against suffering? When both exist within an inhuman structure? In 2012, ground-penetrating radar surveys of the former Forsyte Estate, now a shopping center, revealed a previously unknown underground chamber approximately 15 feet below the surface, near the site of the former oak tree. Excavation under the supervision of University of Georgia, archaeologists uncovered a badly deteriorated wooden chest. Inside were several objects: a child's knitted cap, 4 small cloth dolls of varying sizes arranged in a row, a hand-copied prayer page, and most significantly, a faded cloth-bound journal. Though much of the journal had been lost to moisture and time, several passages remained legible. The handwriting matched that found on the ivory portrait inside the silver locket. Scholars believe the journal belonged to Elelena Beaumont herself, though how it came to be hidden in the chamber remains unknown. The surviving entries span from 1838 to 1841 and constitute the only known record of Elelena's thoughts in her own words. An entry dated July 25, 1838, 2 days after Caroline's death, reads, "They have put her beneath the oak. Master T says it is favor. He does not understand that the ground consumes us all the same. I sit beside her mound when I can. I fear the oak's roots will press upon her small body as they grow. Yet I touch its bark, feeling life continue while hers has ended. Is this what mothers become here? Women who speak to trees?" Another entry, dated March 18, 1840, following James's death, states, "The doctor says his lungs were weak. He does not say why. The damp room, the labor, the milk my body could not make. These are the reasons. But they are not written in books. Master T weeps and calls it God's will. I do not weep anymore. Tears belong to those who expect fairness. I think instead of my grandmother's stories of children who return when this world is too cruel." The final surviving entry, dated August 19, 1841, 2 days after Elizabeth's death, consists of only a few lines. The third has returned to the stars. Master T rages against God. He had hopes for her, plans for Savannah. I look at the one growing inside me now and I know what I must do. There are kinder doorways than this place provides. My grandmother taught me how to find them. Written days before the reported stillbirth and Elelena's disappearance, this entry has fueled decades of debate. Some scholars view it as evidence of deliberate action born of mercy. Others interpret it as metaphorical language, an attempt to impose spiritual meaning on unbearable loss. What is certain is that Elelena Beaumont, reduced in official records to a line item and a price, found ways to assert her inner life. Whether through writing, cultural practice, or final choices, she resisted erasure in the only ways available to her. The underground chamber has since been interpreted as a former root cellar, later repurposed. How Elelena's belongings came to rest there is unknown. Some researchers believe another enslaved person may have hidden them after her disappearance. The items are now preserved in the Savannah Historical Museum's special collections, accessible only by request, a policy that has drawn criticism from scholars who argue that this history should not remain partially hidden. In 2015, Catherine Harrington Wells, a descendant of Thomas Harrington, established a memorial foundation dedicated to researching and acknowledging the lives of those enslaved at Forsyte Estate. A new historical marker now bears Elelena Beaumont's name and recognizes the 4 children buried beneath the oak. A small memorial garden now occupies the site. 4 stones stand in a semicircle. At the center rises a bronze sculpture of a woman with raised, empty arms. White roses often appear at its base, left anonymously. Whether one accepts the spectral accounts or not, Elena Bauman's story endures. It challenges simplified narratives of victimhood and forces, confrontation with the impossible moral terrain created by slavery. Her life, once meant to disappear without trace, continues to speak through fragments, through memory, and through the echoes left behind for those willing to listen.